Well, hello. Today's the 1952 Korean War movie 1 Minute to Zero. Colonel Janowski is training the South Korean army just prior to the start of the war. While there, he meets a beautiful woman who works for the United Nations. The North Koreans attack, and he has to lead troops in evacuating American civilians. He also leads troops to stop the North Korean advance. He has some success in this, but is of course wounded in the fighting and sent to Japan. While there, he starts a romance with the reluctant woman he met. And she is reluctant to get involved because her husband was lost in World War II. Back in Korea, he has to shell a refugee column to stop guerrillas from infiltrating American lines. He eventually leads a daring attack on North Korean supply lines behind enemy lines. There's fierce fighting ensues as the unit is surrounded. Finally, though, a counteroffensive by UN forces breaks through and rescues them. So this is a Korean War movie. It stars Robert Mitchum and Ann Blythe. And it was actually filmed when the Korean War was going on at the time, 1952. And it was the last film that was produced by Howard Hughes. And of course, this is definitely, they wanted to originally have some footage actually shot in Korea, but instead they just had to make do with stock footage. And this film was also filmed in Fort Carson, Colorado, which seems to be the go-to place to film Korean War movies at the time, because a lot of movies were filmed there. And there's a story that Robert Mitchum and his co-star got into a fight with some of the soldiers at a bar off base, and actually injured one, and almost got kicked off. The movie, and Howard Hughes had to really placate the military in that. And for the most part, this is a pretty enjoyable war movie. It's very, very much cheerleading for the pro-war Korean War. And there's a lot of actual, praise for the United Nations. Whole world is going to stand by this. And I guess, at the time, in a certain way, it was a UN operation, because, the Soviets decided to boycott the UN, and they thought that, them being not there was just as good as a veto vote, but no, they just put the resolution through, and since then they've never ever missed a vote in the UN General Council, and over time, the UN has kind of not become a very effective organization. But it's kind of amusing to hear about how great the UN is, and how effective the UN is, and how the UN's gonna do this and that. It's like it is definitely, like I say, a very pro-war movie. It does have some controversy in that there is this one scene where he actually shells a refugee column, which is a bit controversial. But and the military army wanted that removed, and Hughes refused. So you got to give him some credit for being this, controversial and actually sticking with that. It has its typical love story. It was fun, and there's also a lot of action. Very pretty good, solid action. I know this is a movie that was, always played like in the summer when I was a kid, and I'd had to watch it. And of course, it has a lot of good fun action. It's a pretty solid war movie. I think, if you want something good like that, it's one of my favorite Korean War movies. It's definitely in the top five. And yeah, this is good movie. I'd watch it. I recommend it. And if you stuck with me this long, I thank you. You're a unique individual.